Solomon's porch. I'm pretty sure that's... Click, is that one of your... some of your artwork? Remember the thing on The Price is Right when it would go up a hill and then at the end of like I wonder where they got this name from. And I wonder if that's what... Here, kid, eat of the fruit with this pitchfork. See, it's a boot. It's like the bottom of a boot.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it.
I'm not too certain that Saul is actually Paul. It seems too easy for them to just say, oh yeah, Saul's Paul. Hey buddy, do you believe that Saul is Paul? Do you know Paul? You do? Do you know Saul too? Oh, he's over there. Over there? Because you see, Saul has a bunch of sons, a couple daughters. But what about Paul? I don't know. I don't remember him having any children, really. Because if Saul is like the first king, there's the first king and then the second king. What if that's the same king? How did King Nebuchadnezzar come down and take things over if he wasn't already in charge? How does somebody come from the outside and just take over if they're not already in charge? He could have been the first king. And then now there's finally water going on here. The 4 sea creatures, or the 4 horsemen.
Good.
So, how can somebody take over? How can somebody be in charge and then other kingdoms are in charge? Like 3 or 4 other ones. And then he comes back and takes over. So he had to come down and eat the grass for 7 times. It could be 7 months, 7 weeks, 7 years, 7 somethings. And then he takes over. But I just see it as the same person is always in charge. The only thing that happens is their spirit changes. Just like Saul. Just like the 2 sons. A certain man, he had 2 sons. And the one son, he said, well, what did he say? He said, yeah, I'll go. He said, yeah, sure, I'll go. And he didn't. Then you have the other son that says, nah, I'm not going. And then he does. So what if it's the same person? The same person says, yeah, I'll go. And they just never do. At first. So because he never went, that's his mindset. And then if you're looking at him as he's gonna go, well, he wasn't going anyway. And then he changes his mind. At the end, becomes the other son, the good side, the good and evil. And he says, all right, I'll go. And then he went. Can you imagine being inside of there, driving around? Go ahead, you can go. Because I see it like this. Peter and Paul, and then Saul. Right, John? Chief Justice. Because that's Peter over there. And then that's Stephen. Stephen, Peter, and Paul. And then and then Saul would have to be, he would have to be King Agrippa, because why else would Paul go to the king and try to convince him of something if he was Saul in the first place? So that's my point. If Saul was Paul, I mean, if Paul became Saul, why would he be going to... All right, so Saul was in charge. He was king. All the stories about Saul. But then Saul dies along with Jonathan. Well, then where's Paul? How is it that Paul is still alive if Saul died? So that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I'm pretty sure her hand is right there with her sword in her hand. So I'm just going to think this one out loud. Saul was the king. His son Jonathan seemed to be his military commander. And Saul was hunting David. He was trying to kill him every day. Now, if you really wanted to kill somebody, that's all you would do is just kill him. You wouldn't have to try. But when you're gang stalking somebody, every morning when they're watching his house, they're there. What Saul is trying to do is kill David's spirit, his mental state of mind, make him go mad. Because what does gang stalking do to people? Well, it could be quite irritating at times because it's like, hey, come on, you clowns. What's wrong with you? Wake up. And so it can do some damage mentally if you allow it to. And that's equivalent to Saul hunting David down day in and day out for years. 4 years. Eventually, time has an end. So Jonathan was his top military commander, as in, you know, gang stalking and surveilling and stuff like that, I'm sure. Hey, Glenn, here. You sure you don't live here, Glenn, and you act like you live in Michigan? I thought I seen you earlier. It looked like you. But there's a genie in a bottle. Eventually there's a 45-day period when World War Z takes place. This great event that's coming up. And then Jonathan has his armor bearer. So when Jonathan Kleck hops up on YouTube, he hasn't been up in a while. Maybe this is the script part where he dies because Saul's getting ready to die too. It's like Paul would be Saul's son. Jonathan, Paul, Judas, 888. Moses. So it's like Moses. He would also be playing David. And then there's a spiritual David, like just a regular person walking around just on the earth, just walking around. And so he would be considered Moses, Judas, Paul, David, at least 4 different people. So when Kleck has his bear, does that represent that he's the armor bearer? Or is he David? Or is he truly the armor bearer for David? But because everything has to be not clearly understood. It's like he's... Oh, we're allowed back here? I thought this was only an Easter event. Is that Lazarus, Mary, and Martha? So is he really the armor bearer for David, or is David his armor bearer? Because Jonathan has an armor bearer. Because he bears the armor. And didn't Saul make a statue of himself choking his chicken? Or with his sword in his hand? Winking his eye. Is that not a chicken head? And is he not choking it? With his feet of clay. His 10 toes. Hair like a woman. Who would ever know what the hell this thing is? He got his hand coming out. Like, hey, if a reptilian puts his hand up, it's like, hey, anybody wants to accept Jesus? Raise your hand. Raise your hand in the back. Raise your hand. And they're all raising their hand. Come to raise your hand. 1944 and a half. What does that say? Lipahama, Hamahama. So how can Saul actually be Paul of Tarsus? I mean, I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced all the way. Because when people say that, it's almost like saying, well, just blatantly, well, Daniel was Jesus. So just, no, you have to figure it out. You have to walk on the sea of glass. How long do I have to wait until I get straight answers from real people, face to face, eye to eye? Like real, legitimate. Here, Robin. Come here. Well, it's time to tell you the truth about the Bible. First, let's start with this. I'm going to tell you exactly who every single character is in the Bible. Old Testament, New Testament, same person, different name. Similar story. Same theme, different story. You no longer have to guess anymore. I'm glad that you were hot or cold, because that's what God wanted you to be. It's going to be some kind of convention in there, I guess. Here's Maja. Gerhard Marx. And there's the only extra window. Standing room only. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8 tents. Guess I forget sometimes. Oh, there it goes. The Philadelphia show. April 29th through May 1st.
And then I want a victory dance when you guys.
That's only for 3 days. Sunday. Maybe I'll come here Sunday, May 1st. I gotta help my sister move on the 30th. I forget that most of these people they don't live here. Tourists. And they all do the Rocky scene. They all got the Rocky theme song going on. Do they really know what the key is, though? Which is the rock?
Jeremy's gonna beat us. Jeremy's gonna beat us.
Is this the pavement? When they get their sentences, they go down. It's like that thing opens up. It's like lightning from the east to the west. A lot of life down here. You think anybody would have guessed that that really comes from the representing the inside? Like where it shows the Pope the one time walking up a set of stairs with that right in front of him. But it's really a pitchfork stabbing a alligator with his armor bearer right here. I guess this is like a cow. Yeah, a bull. Male, female, has a man's face. She's butt naked. Wait a minute. You have the serpent with you. Yep. Is that Eve? He got the eagle bound up. I told you, eagle, you're going down. And it looks like he's looking at him from the side too. He just has a bow in his hand. And then she has hair. That kind of looks like flex hair. With fish, catching fish. So the other one was serpent. And that one's fish. If anybody wants to get baptized, just come down here by the Jordan. Or don't. There's the tower that Skip talks about. I forget what you call it, but it's on the east side of the Jordan, and it's aimed directly so you can see enemy territory. That'd be great if like Skip would just walk by and like, hey Skip, man, what's going on? Want to go have a sandwich or something? Go down to the boathouse row and hang out by Solomon's porch. Because sometimes I get lonely. I get tired of talking to myself. Like hanging out with myself. One day. I wish I lived down here. Like I had like I wish I had an apartment or something. That'd be nice to just have an apartment somewhere. Somewhere around the center of the city. Because then it makes it easier for me to just get around. Not have to worry about parking. Sure would be nice. One of the reasons why I think that Saul wouldn't be Paul is because Paul's the one that did all the work. Paul's the one that was in jail. Paul's the one that had to go to a king to convince the king about Christ and his falling off the horse. And then it would also give a good reason for people to think that Paul is Saul as the king. So when you see Paul, like you'll worship him as Saul, but Saul's really the king, the first king. And when you look at that landscape in Philadelphia, I mean, it just, to me, the top part resembles Skip, which means Skip can't actually look like that. That's a mask around it. It's not really his true look, because you can't, like, the landscape has already been made 100 years ago, before Skip was, well, I don't know, maybe you've been alive for a long time, but the point is, and the landscape with the art museum looking like Jonathan Clegg with his headphones on and hair like a woman, there's no way that it's just a coincidence that a person looks that way. Although you can't really tell the face. It's just the hair itself and the headphones and you know, being eaten by a serpent. But with Skip at the top being the God of Israel here in Philadelphia, and then there's a God of Israel, the Spirit, but it's always played out literal and spiritual. So it just makes it easier for people to confuse it. And when people just say it flat out that, yeah, Saul is Paul, he turned to Paul, and I'm not too certain about that. I'm just not. I think maybe Saul was Paul's father. Just like Jonathan was Saul's son. Just like Judas was the son of Simon. Just like Moses was he didn't want to be considered the, son-in-law of Pharaoh? Something along those lines. But Moses was part of the family of Pharaoh. Just like Jonathan is the part of the family of Saul. And I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Because I also think that Jonathan is also, he's the one playing King David. And maybe actually is, in real life, the King David. But getting ready to be king, but not really. Because the armor bearer was his sidekick, like Batman and